on our planet. Welcome to the Fleet Forum Wednesday webinar. Today about setting smart fleet management goals. So it's great. We have quite a number of people. I'm very pleased to see. So would be good if you can type your name and where you're from. So we all know and can see, how wide our audience is today. And it's also for me a good moment to hear, to see whether you can hear me loud and clearly. And I see already some people typing, so that's good. I'm very happy to see that. So, setting smart fleet management goals. Who would do that? So, indeed, who would do that? And I actually am very interested to hear from you. So, who already did set goals for 2023? So, let us do a short poll to start with. Very easy. The question is, did you set goals for 2023? Yes, no, or I'm working on it. Will come soon. Yeah. So just to give a bit of an indication who works in general with objectives of goals, annual objectives. So did you set any objectives for this year? Did you not? But do you still intend to do so? That's also an option. It's already the 1st of February. Time flies, I would almost say. I can still remember that we celebrated New Year and we're already 1 month later. So 1 month gone to realize, let's say, everything you want to realize in 2023. So I see that we have most of the people voted. So let me share with you the results. So what we see here is that most people are still working on it. Well, that's good. The second is, well, yes, we already have goals. I already have goals. I'm very happy to see that. Some do not have goals. So at least the majority of the people do work with annual objectives or annual goals. So that's good to see. I'm very happy to see. Let's get into that more. Some people do not have set goals or are still working on it, but why would you do that? Why would you set annual objectives or annual goals? There might be a lot of good reasons. Some might indeed not see any reasons at all to not to do it. You have to spend some time, to realize the objectives of your goals. Not only realize it, also setting them. Yeah, you need to investigate. You need to discuss with people. So why would you spend all that time to set objectives for yourself for a year? Well, I think there are two reasons to do so. Objectives, goals can make your life easier, much easier, and it can give you satisfaction. So let's look into the two, why goals can make your life easier. So goals are the perfect tool to communicate with your environment, with your management, with your colleague managers, with your drivers, with your staff. So you communicate to everyone. Let's say one of your objectives for this year is, I want to reduce my average fuel consumption of all my vehicles in 2023 by 10% compared to 2022. That is a clear objective. So you communicate it to everyone that you know, everyone who's involved, you communicate it. And some people might say, okay, thank you. At least they know. Some people say, but why do you want to do that? Well, and you can explain, because it's important as an organization, we set a long-term objective to reduce the emissions of our operations. And fleet is an important contributor to the emissions of our organization. Therefore, I want to reduce it. I have a longer-term goal. And for this year, one of my ways to do so is to reduce the fuel consumption by 10%. Okay, then people understand. And then some people might say, but how are we going to do that then? And then you move, I would almost say, in the perfect engagement tool, because people are interested. They want to know why So one of the ways to deal with it is to start engaging people. Is that you say, well, I'm open to any ideas. So who knows how we can do that? Or you can organize sessions, brainstorm sessions, discussion sessions with your drivers, with staff, with program people. So everyone who can play a role. And you say, great. So how can we do that? And people might come up with some very good ideas. But maybe most important, apart from the ideas, you get that it starts trickling people's minds. So drivers start thinking about reducing fuel consumption when they drive, just because the fact that they discuss it with you, that you say it's important for the organization, this is what we do, why we do it, and they start thinking about, okay, so I might, let's say, apply a little more eco driving. They might have had a training, or you might still have planned the training, but they start thinking about it. And maybe people from programs say, well, actually, we have these two vehicles that we use, but it might be more effective if we have just one minibus. Well, that's a good idea, and better for, let's say, your support to programs as well. And you will have other ideas which will help you as well. So you might say, you know what we're going to do? As from today, as from this year, all the longer trips, we only allocate the newest vehicles to longer trips. The older vehicles are being used for short trips. So that means that for the longer trips, you use newer vehicles who are more fuel efficient. That is a way to do it. But it's also, if you communicate about that and discuss it with people, then people who are using the cars, probably in most cases program people, they understand why if they do short trips, they always get the oldest vehicle. They might complain about it, but now you prevent that because they understand that it's a way to contribute to reduction of fuel consumption. So that's a way to engage people, and it's a perfect focus tool. So you know what you want to achieve. So that's where you can focus on. And don't think about all the other things that happen around you. This is what you need to do. So why does it make your life easier? It's easy to communicate. It's easy to focus. It helps you to engage people. And people start working with and for you to realize your objectives. And once you've realized all the objectives at the end of the year, you will be a happy person, happy woman, happy man, because you reach your objective. That's always a feeling of satisfaction, of happiness. It makes your team stronger because you don't have the feeling that you did it together as a team. You realize the objectives. And it also, of course, gives you recognition from the organization. You did a great job. You promised to deliver an objective and you managed. And that, of course, can reinforce your self-confidence and your self-esteem. So 2 reasons why you should set objectives or goal. It makes your life easier and it makes you satisfied at the end of the year. So that's 2 reasons why I think that you should do it. But then how do you do that? How do you set your objectives? Many ways, but at least 4, I would say, topics that you need to think about. One is the organizational objectives. So, like in the example of the reduction of fuel consumption, one of the organizational objectives is to reduce emissions of all the operations. And so reduction of fuel consumption fit in there. So it's important that you look at the organizational objective and how can you contribute to that with your fleet management. Reduction of fuel consumption is one of them. Your own long-term objectives. In the same example, you already set a target, an objective for the next 5 years, how you want to reduce emissions, or with what percentage you want to reduce the emissions to contribute to the overall objective of the organization. This annual objective fits in that long-term objective. Your stakeholders, there's many stakeholders, of course, your drivers, your staff, dispatchers, admin people, finance people, people working in programs or projects. They are all your stakeholders that you need to talk to them. You need to discuss with them what their needs are, what their challenges are, what their ideas are, and you take that into account as well. And of course, you look at what did you do? How did you perform last year, 2022? So what does it mean? How you can set your objective? That's only, let's say, 4 areas, 4 topics, 4 groups that you need to take into account. And based on all the input you get there, you sort of set a list of objectives of what you think that is what I think that I should realize this year. Extremely important. Discuss with your manager, agree with your manager, sign with your manager. This is what I'm going to do this year. These are the objectives for myself for this year. And then you have your annual goals. So effective goal setting. So have goals, but how do you define goals? And that's where SMART comes in. Probably many of you are, let's say, familiar with SMART goals, but maybe not everyone. So let's have a look at it. Before I forget, if you have any questions already, please type it in. Use the question mark at the right bottom where you can chat, and then we can, at the end of the presentation, we can dig into your questions and I can answer them. So SMART, what does SMART mean? There's many, not many, there are several different definitions of SMART. So let's look at the one that is most being used. So it's specific, is the S. So SMART is an abbreviation of 5 topics that you need to take into account to set your goals. Let's go again. Look at the objective of fuel consumption reduction. You can say, well, in 2023, I want to reduce my fuel consumption. The first one is it's not specific. So specific is I want to reduce the average fuel consumption of all my vehicles in 2023 by 10% compared to 2022. That is very specific. It's clear. Everyone knows what it means, how it can be measured. That's the second one. Your objective should be measurable. Fuel consumption is measurable, assuming that you have the data of 2022 as well. Then you can compare, so it's measurable. Actionable. That means actually that it is within your control, within your span of control. So the objective can be realized by your activities. Actionable. Realistic, you say, well, is 10% realistic? You might say, if I have a target of 80% reduction in fuel consumption, that's completely out of scope. That's not realistic. If 10% is realistic, you can only decide for yourself. And the time bound is, as I said, this year, 2023 average over 12-month period compared to the average of 2022. So very specific, should be you should be able to measure it. You should be able to control it. It's realistic and it's time bound. If you look at the second picture, there you see the A and the R are a bit different. The A is here attainable, which is the same as the R and the other as realistic, and it's relevant. Of course, also important. In this case, it is relevant because it fits in the organizational objectives of reduction of emissions. Okay. Set your goals in a smart way because it makes it easy to communicate, easy to measure, and easy to see if you realized your objectives. Let's do another poll. So how many goals did you set for 2023? And I will show the poll here. So how many goals did you set? Is it one or two, 3 or 4, 5 or 6, or more than 6? So some of you who said, okay, yes, I have set my goals, or well, I'm working on it. What is the idea that you have about how many goals you should set? Yeah, I see some people. I see that, okay, most people have submitted their number of goals. One more. Okay. Let me share the results with you. So the majority of the people say, 3 to 4 goals, then 1 to 2, and then 5 to 6. I'm extremely happy because, you know, a big risk in many people is that the number of objectives is very high, 6, 7, 8 objectives sometimes even. And that means if you have so many objectives, that there's no way you can focus on it. 6, 7 is already too much. I would say 3 is a good number of objectives. 4 maybe, but I would say 3. You know, and don't forget, because you can focus on these 3 to realize these 3. That's already hard to realize 3 smart, ambitious objectives. And don't forget that any goal you have, by realizing that, you will influence other topics as well. Let's go back again to the example of reduction of fuel consumption by 10%. Let's look at some examples of how you can do that. You can do that by saying, okay, as from now, we allocate newer vehicles to longer trips. That means these vehicles are more fuel efficient, so you reduce fuel consumption, but at the same time, you also reduce costs because these newer vehicles are in general more cost effective than older vehicles. So even without having explicit objective on cost, you should still influence cost and reduce cost by that. Drivers might get more into the habit of eco-driving, means reduction of fuel consumption. But we also know, and you also know, that the way that we do eco-driving also means that you become a safer driver. So at the same time, while reducing fuel consumption, you reduce the risk of road crash as well, and therefore also the risk of cost. So objectives are very focused, ensure that you have a limited number, but at the same time, by realizing your objectives, you influence a lot of other topics as well. So you don't need to have explicit objectives of everything that is within your organization. Okay, so you have your objectives, and now you have to translate that into an action plan, because all the examples that we used, allocate newer vehicles to longer trips, do eco-driving, maybe replace vehicles by a minibus. That's all activities that you have to plan. At the beginning of the year, you say, okay, what is it that I want to realize? And what activities do I need to do to realize those? So you have your objectives, you define the different activities, and you describe the activities. So what is it that you expect from this activity? Then you are very clear on who plays a role, who has to, let's say, perform, deliver, conduct this activity. And you need resources. Probably you might need financial resources, or you might need people who support you. You might need your management to support you in a specific case, or you might need an external expert to help you. So you need to define what kind of resources you need. And of course, you have a deadline or a time frame in which the activity should happen. You can extend this list, but at least this is the minimum of topics that you need to have in your action plan. Described at the beginning of the year, drafted at the beginning of the year, to ensure that you know how to realize your objective. And again, you can use that to communicate, to engage, to discuss, to get new ideas, etc., etc. Once you have set your action plan, then it's important that you have a sort of a report or a dashboard. So you can report frequently on the progress of your objectives. For your fuel consumption, for example, you have monthly reports on the progress of your objective, your fuel consumption. So you can monitor it. You can see, am I on track? And if you say, my goal for this year is 10% reduction of average fuel consumption, and after half a year, you're only at the level of 2% reduction, you know that you're definitely not on track. And hopefully you see it already earlier, after a quarter, and you can intervene there. You can define new actions or other actions to ensure that you are, let's say, you get back on track Report for yourself to analyze, to see how you're doing, and reports also to communicate again to people around you, to your team. How are we doing on the objectives? To your management, how are you doing on your objectives? So it's a communication tool and also a monitoring tool to see whether you need new interventions, change your activities. Okay. Celebrate successes. It's an important one. So set your goals, align with your management, report on it, monitor it, see if you are on track. And if you have successes, even during the year, if you, after the first quarter, you already see that you are at the level of reduction of 5% already in the quarter, then you're doing a great job. You're definitely on track. So you can celebrate that, guys, girls. We are on track more even. We are, let's say, beyond our own objective. So celebrate that. Let people know that they are doing a great job and make people happy by celebrating that. And if you reinforce everyone to put even more effort, more energy to ensure that you realize your objectives. So, summarized some of the topics that we discussed today or that we spoke about today. Always align your objectives with your manager. You need to have the backup from your manager to say, yes, these objectives are good objectives. So that is where you can work on this year, because that means that your manager will support you. It also means that your manager will not come up every week with other ideas that what you need to do or need to achieve, because you have a strong agreement, alignment on this. These are the focus areas for 2023. Make your goals SMART, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound, and relevant, as well as the second R. Use the goals for communication and engagement, so everyone knows what you want to achieve, what you need to achieve. Engage people, make them, let's say, help you, support you, work with you to realize your objectives. Report and monitor, celebrate successes, and be happy at the end of the year that you realized your objectives. I would like to stick with this and to see if there's questions. Then we still have some time for questions. I see the first question is, sound is loud and clear on my side. So that's not really a question. What is the difference between KPIs and goals or objectives? The objective, the goal is what you want to achieve, and the KPI is the measurement. So a KPI is fuel consumption. That is a KPI. It's a key performance indicator. So you use a KPI, the key performance indicator of fuel consumption, to report. Your objective is SMART. Your objective is reduce average fuel consumption of all my vehicles in 2023 by 10% compared to 2022. That is the objective. And you use the KPI fuel consumption, to measure whether you are on track or at the end reach your objective. So that is the difference between KPI and goals. Goals is what you want to achieve. At the end, KPI is the way to measure it. Let me see. Second question. I'm still working on my goal setting. Can colleagues are in the chat what kind of goals they have set, to get some examples? Well, Talia, I think that's a great idea. Let's see if people, if there's any ideas from people. So what kind of goals did you set? I see George, he says, increase, wait, let me change it so I can put them on the screen for everyone. So George says, increase weekly checks of the vehicles by 20%. Very good. That is a clear, the 20% is clear. The weekly checks are clear. Just to be sure, George, you might still embed here is over what period. Is it an average weekly check and compared to what? So you say increase the average weekly checks in 2023 by 20% compared to 2022, something like that. So to make it even more clear. But you're very good on track in setting smart objectives. Let me see if there's other people who say, yeah, that is the way. Yeah, I see that Charles also said, oh, I'm reducing my carbon emission by 10% by the end of 2023. And I see that Nadine, you said KPI is the key performance indicator reports that you do to check if you have reached your objective. Exactly. That's exactly what I think it is as well. Nadine, that is the way how you indeed keep track on your objectives. Let me see if there's other ideas. I see some more. That's interesting. Let me see. Amaze that train 50% of our drivers on how to become an eco driver by year 2023. Very good. It definitely fits into probably a higher objective of reducing fuel consumption or reducing cost or reducing emissions. But it is a clear goal, 50% of drivers, how to become an EVO driver by year 2023. And let me see. Hassan said, increase the electric vehicles in the fleet by 10% by the end of 2023. Well, that's an ambitious objective, Hassan, but great, because we do know in circumstances, in environments where it is possible to drive electric vehicles, they can definitely contribute to reduction of emissions. Let me see. I see some others, so it's a great question on examples, and I will show them. On the screen as well. Let me see. George was at level 2 training of 50% of the 8 mechanics of the mission by end of 2023. Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay. Yeah, the good example as well. I think that Talia, but some other people as well might be inspired by the good examples that we see here. Thank you, George. And Nadine has increased the utilization rate of vehicles by 10%. How combining trips get rid of some extra unused vehicles, etc. Very good. Yeah. Also here, I would say it is make it time bound. The 10% is very clear. Utilization rate is very clear. Is over what period compared to what period, and then you have not any confusion at all anymore. But it's a good example of an objective that you can set. So the last one then, from Nadine. Let's see. Thank you, Nadine, for all your examples. Decrease operational or variable costs. And buying new vehicles as maintenance will decrease. Get rid of extra vehicles. Shuffle schedule of the driver to reduce overtime by electric vehicles. Many examples of how you can realize indeed the decrease of operational or variable costs. And again, also make very clear, make it very smart what your objectives is. But all the activities that you mention here can be part of an activity plan to indeed realize, let's say, reduction of costs. Okay. Unfortunately, we are already at the end of this webinar. As you know, we will have webinars every Wednesday. So next week, there will be a webinar about data analysis, the do's and the don'ts. So how can you use data? What's good data? What's bad data? What's crap data? How can you translate data into information? How can you use it, let's say, to really support you in improving your performance? Everything around data next week. For this week, thank you very much. Thank you for your active participation and contribution. I really liked it. As you know, the recording is available, so you can also show it to other colleagues today. Thank you and have a great rest of today, and hope to see you next week, Wednesday again.